So the goal isn't salvation, it's education, it's enlightenment. That is how you come to understand the truth. So in many ways, Hinduism, even though from our Western eyes may look so bizarre and we don't understand the images or icons, when you start to look at the theology, it really comes down to this idea of all being one, and as being part of that, it's our ignorance thinking that we are separate from the one that leads to all the pain and suffering in the world, and how we treat each other. I'll never forget the first time I read the Upanishads, which is one of the later Vedas. And in the Upanishads, there's a passage talking about how the wood and the flame are the same. The killer and the killed are the same. The eater and the eaten are the same. And when I began to wrap my head around that, when you think about how that would affect your practical life, it's like, by me teaching, I am actually teaching to myself in this venue. The illusion is that I am separate from you. But if we are all the same and all the one, this is just one manifestation of myself interacting with other manifestations of myself. Do you see how differently you would treat perhaps yourself and others if you really believe that? That everyone in this room is actually me and I am them and we are all one? So this idea or this aspect, it's almost like a great jewel where we have this concept of God. But we can call God different things, like in the pantheon of Hinduism. You know, we can have the Brahman, the Shiva, Vishnu. But they wouldn't have any problem throwing in Yahweh, Dharma, Jesus, Wakentanka, rocks, trees, stones, put your name here, everything. And what you end up having is, it's just like this one multifaceted jewel, and we are simply seeing different facets is what has lit up to us. And that's where our devotion or intention has been. And the Hindu has no problem with this because they believe if you're following the Jesus path, it will take you to God. If you're connected to the rocks and nature and trees, it will bring you to God. If you're connected to yourself or Shiva or Allah or Yahweh, in the end, if you follow that path, it will lead you to God. Well, because where else could it lead? Because there's nowhere else to go. Even like a naturalist, materialist path eventually is going to reconcile you to the one. Part of the problem is Brahman is one of the metaphors they use. He's like the ocean. And we are like individual, like little raindrops. And as we are cast or incarnated into this world of space-time, which is illusion, we see ourselves as these individual little lives. But our journey is to return to the sea, Brahman, from which we came. And so as we journey and we grow, and we turn into little creeklets, and then into rivers, and finally enter back into the ocean, we no longer think, oh, I was the Mississippi, I was the Ganges, I was the eel or the Sacramento rivers. We are one in the ocean. Or you could use the analogy of waves. You have individual waves that crest and peak, and you can identify them, but it's all part of the ocean. It's not disconnected. It's just manifestations of the one. Fascinating. So what happens in this world and I hope this isn't offensive to Hindus, but I almost like to think of it as a cosmic hide and seek, of God playing hide and seek with himself. And so what happens is Brahman incarnates into the world. And he may incarnate, let's do something simple like an ant or an amoeba. And so basically all the amoeba, we all come into the world with Dharma. And this is kind of like what we were meant to do or be or manifest in this particular iteration of the divine. And all of us have like a different Dharma that we fulfill in life. So in the Catholic tradition, this would be kind of like your charisma, or what was your spiritual gift? Why did God place you? What is your part of the church? And this would be, your Dharma would be part of why you were in this process. And then there's also this idea of karma, which is similar to the Christian concept of you reap what you sow. What you put out into the universe, it will come back to you again. So this idea, we have similar concepts within the Christian tradition as well as the Hindu tradition. Then we have reincarnation. And so as out of the ocean of Brahman were manifested in, this is called the wheel of Samsara. And that is how this physical material world is viewed, the world of illusion, the world of samsara. And so this amoeba is incarnated into this world, but it's Brahman in the form of an amoeba. And when it has fulfilled its dharma and paid its karma, it gets to move on to the next stage. And now maybe this time it gets to be an ant. And so now we got this little ant creature, and maybe its first incarnation, it comes back as like a worker ant, it dies, comes back worker ant, maybe eventually gets to become a drone, becomes a queen, maybe messes up, has to go back, be a drone for again, queen, and it fulfills its ant dharma, and then it gets to move on to now maybe it gets to be butterfly, which is kind of a great illustration too, right? Born a worm, the earth to turn, but eventually you transform into this glorious being. And after you fulfill that dharma, maybe you come back as like a rabbit or something, or some little rodent. But at least you're a mammal now, so you're moving up the food chain. And then once you fulfill that dharma, maybe you come back as a predatory animal, like a fox or a dog or a tiger or a lion or whatever. And then eventually, the last rung, you get to be a human. So well done, everyone in this room. You're coming down the home stretch. You've reached the human stage of reincarnation. But even in this, you could still be looking at 10,000 more reincarnations before you reach enlightenment. And at this point, you realize that you indeed are it. You are God. And once you have this realization, it's almost like God has been playing this play your own adventure game, where it's almost like a divine amnesia, where he's living truly as an amoeba, then he's living truly as an ant, having an ant life, living all these different human lives until the day the veil has been pulled back and you realize your true essential nature and self is God. Then you come out of this wheel of reincarnation and return back into the sea of Brahman. But then guess what happens? But you don't remember, right? Because now it's round 2, or round 10,000, or round billion.